My name is Alex, I'm a patchwork nerd, and stop the presses, everybody pause, wait, hang on a second, we'll get to the topic of the video, but holy hazelnuts, we have hit 1,000 subscribers. I'm just freaking out still about it. It happened a little bit ago last week and I just cannot believe it. So I want to thank you all so much for subscribing to my channel and liking my videos and joining me on this crazy AuthorTube journey that I'm taking. I'm just so happy and I can't make words function because that's how excited I am. I'm actually going to be doing a Q&A about myself, my writing, my channel, any questions that you want to do. So if you are interested in submitting a question, please leave those in a comment down below. Now on to the focus of today's topic. About a year ago, I created a video that was all about tips for writing short stories, and it's been my most successful video to date. And it's nearing 10,000 views. And I'll be honest, when I made that video, it was still when I was very green to making videos and I felt like I seemed pretty uncomfortable in it. I enjoyed the tips that I said, but I feel like there's some information that I may have left out in that video. The other thing I noticed in the comments of that video is that a lot of people who found that video are newbies to writing short stories. They were either taking a class for the first time with short stories involved, or they were needing to do something for homework. So I just wanted to create a video that kind of helps give people a crash course and introduction into how to write short stories. So let's take a look at writing short stories for newbies, and it's gonna be fun. Let's go. And just to give you a little bit of a lesson on what a typical short story looks like, a short story is usually starting at about 1,500 words. I'd say the average for my short stories are anywhere between 8,000 and 10,000 words. Just experiment and play with it. And also, if you're taking a class, your teachers might have a specific word count goal, or they might have a page count goal, so be very mindful of that. The first tip I'm going to offer to you is to start with a simple idea or premise. I write predominantly horror, so I always try when I am creating a story to not do something that has too many bells and whistles and strings attached to it. Instead, try to pick an idea that starts out really simplistic and then build off of that idea. That way you're not overcomplicating things. Focus on capturing one small moment as opposed to a gigantic history or a long timeline. I usually have short stories only take place in the course of a night or a day or even a week, but try to limit your timeline because that's definitely going to make the story shrink down quite a bit, and it's going to give you a lot less details that are going to accidentally overbloat the story. The second tip I have is to limit the size of your cast. If you have a lot of characters in your story, it's going to get complicated very quickly. A short story is more about trying to capture that single moment that I mentioned before with a single character or a very small band of characters. Try to focus on only a handful of characters because one, it's going to be less characters to develop and try to get into their heads, and two, it is going to limit the size and the scope of the story. Always think small when you're going with short stories. The smaller your cast, the smaller your setting, the smaller your timeline, the more you're going to be able to shrink things down and keep them within that shorter word count. A third tip I have is try focusing on writing about mundane problems. I write horror, like I mentioned before, and a lot of times I try to capture a very mundane problem and then find the horrific in it. To use a real short story for an example, the story Grease by Junji Ito, who is a horror manga artist, it takes place with a family of 3, and the father owns a restaurant that the family lives in, and they have a house that is just full of grease because he makes really greasy food, and it deals with the mundane problem of that the oldest brother is getting really bad acne and it is making him act out, it's making him miserable, and it's all about how the grease is making the family kind of slowly lose their minds. But it's starting with a really mundane problem. Try to find small little blips in life and use that as your jumping off point for what you can do with your story. Another tip I have for writing short stories is to not overcomplicate things with overly large world building or overly large magic systems. I know a lot of times when I started writing short stories, I would start with problems based in reality and then I would slowly add the magic in. Fantasy is a very complicated genre to write, and if you are new to writing in general, you might want to practice with writing things that are contemporary just to get practice with writing, and then slowly add the fantasy into it later. Once you have more confidence in your skills as a writer, you'll have more confidence to be able to world build and do stories that take place in different worlds and have high fantasy elements. But a lot of times I recommend, if you are brand new to writing short stories, start with reality and try to observe the world around you and try to capture things on the page very realistically, and then slowly add the fantasy in. And I know a lot of people might get upset and say, wait a minute, writing fantasy is the genre I want to write. Not telling you can't do that. I'm just saying starting with some short stories that are based in reality might help you practice your writing skills and get them stronger, so that way when it's time to go to the more complicated things like world building and magic system developing and all of that, it'll be a little bit easier and a little less overwhelming. And containing all your ideas in a short story is overwhelming. That's okay. It just takes a lot of practice and a lot of focus. So hopefully with my tips you were able to get a little bit of insight into how you can start writing short stories, especially if you're new to this. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much to all my Patreon supporters for being like the coolest people ever, and thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. Please, 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 for my Q&A, leave some questions down below. I would love to answer those. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you're new to my channel, please hit that happy little subscribe button down below. I post new videos on Mondays. And finally, if you want to meet fellow writers, please join me over on Twitter every Sunday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time for Writer's Patch. It is writing related chat that I host, and it is awesome, and you guys are awesome, and I can't wait to keep making more writing videos, and I can't wait to see where my channel is gonna go, because holy crap, 1,000 subscribers. I'm still so giddy. Okay, I will let you guys go, but I will see you in my next video. Toodles!